Hello, everybody. Welcome back to ND Ice, the home of high school, junior, and college hockey in the state of North Dakota. Today we have the Catching Up with Brad and the Boys Summer Special. I'm your host, David Trinka, and my co-host, Lincoln Retzloff, alongside Brad Schlossman, beat writer for UND on the Grand Forks Herald. Um, yeah, so Summer Special, we're going to go over a little bit of the news that's been going on over the summer, the NHL draft with the UND players that were involved with that, and then a bunch of other stuff. So, Lincoln, why don't you start us off, buddy?
Yeah, let's hop right into it here, fellas. I think we'll start off with just our weekend recaps and what we kind of been getting up to this summer. Schloss, what have you been doing lately?
Well, right now, I'm trying to, for the work perspective, trying to find out. Kind of this week, I'll come out with my list of probably 30 names to watch for recruiting on August 1st. I've been doing a lot of research on that. I've been writing I just wrote a story about a lengthy one about Major League Hockey, which
Oh
appears to
yeah.
be a bit of a sham.
Yeah.
And then, the summer is time to try to take some downtime and relax a little bit. But it kind
Mm-hmm.
of feels like this year it's already crept up and summer's starting to dwindle.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, go ahead, Dave.
Yeah, just been working construction this summer. I had to switch it up after doing Happy Harry's last summer, so that I do some a little more hands-on, making some good money, long hours though, in the sun, so I get a good tan, kind of look good, for the summer, and yeah, just went to the lake this last weekend with the boys. Sauce was there. A little shindig with the boys, a whole bunch of us, like 20, 25. We had to set up tents in the backyard, so it was pretty fun and got after it for sure. Uh, Pretty tired after yesterday, just to keep it a little
Oh
light.
yeah.
But what about you, Sauce?
Yeah, no, it was a long weekend, and now that we're kind of into the dog days of summer here, school year is approaching. I'm ready to get up back to Grand Forks myself.
Hmm.
Been working at our local gym, Total Balance. Don't get many hours, so I just kind of sit around and I don't know, look at all your articles, Brad. Look up on all the new hockey news, listen to podcasts and whatnot. But
Hmm.
yeah, I mean we'll hop right in here with our first segment. So some over the summer, there were some recent rule changes to in the NCAA for college hockey. We won't go too depth into most of them, but there are a few of them that caught my eye. Brad, you can probably jump into them a little bit more, but the ones I saw were they changed the face-off rule for one, where centers now will get thrown out of the dot if they go earlier or whatever. They're not originally they changed it because of they wanted to speed up the game and whatnot. Another rule they changed is the continuation rule, which I think is going to be really interesting, especially since I think there were quite a few times this year, UND fans, I think specifically in at the Frozen face-off, there was a goal. I think it went across. I don't know who, if it was Kuntz or something. Someone shot the puck. It went across into the net, but they blew the play dead, so it doesn't count. But now that rule will be changed to where if the goalie doesn't have whatever possession, it rolls by. I mean, Schloss, you can take it away here. You probably got more in depth on that.
Yeah, basically it gives the referee leeway to determine like if the puck's sitting right there and a guy's about to knock it in and the whistle blows as he's shooting it in. The way the rule is written right now, that's no goal. If the whistle
Mm-hmm.
blows, the play is dead right away in college hockey. Jackson Kuntz did have a goal that he lost in Colorado Springs that would have counted
Yeah,
with
that's the
the
one.
continuation rule there. There's actually a play in the Frozen Four too, where I think the officials called it with the new rule because I remember it was down to my left, and the way the rule is currently written, I thought that probably should not have counted because the whistle
Mm-hmm.
did go before the puck crossed. But It was going in, it was going to be a goal, and they kind of maybe jumped that one. As far as the faceoffs, the only time that they, yeah, they're just trying to speed up the game, and I think they felt
Right.
like that um,
Hmm.
the new rule when they instituted that it didn't speed up the game, so it'll go kind of back to the old one. And then the other one that I think that people will notice is what we like to call the double jeopardy rule, where you score a goal on a delayed penalty. In college hockey, you get the power play still. That is gone now. It will go back to the what every other level of hockey generally does that. So if you score a goal, there's a delayed penalty, you do not get the power play on top of it.
Hmm.
So I think that's another one that fans will recognize.
Mm-hmm.
Hmm.
No, yeah, lots of rule changes that I think we will see affect the game a little bit. I am really excited to see how the continuation one does work, and it will be cool to see them go back to the whole face-off
Hmm.
thing where guys are getting thrown out or whatever. I remember that from
Yeah.
when we were younger going to UND games, and then yeah, it just went away. They started doing the warnings and whatnot.
Yeah.
So
Hmm.
And I should point out too, the one situation where they will not throw out the center is
mhm,
in a defensive zone draw after an icing, because what was happening back in the day was a team would put a winger in there on purpose to take the draw and purposely jump and get thrown out, just wasting time trying to get rest for their players. So the defending team on a no change situation, I believe it is, they will not throw the center out.
mhm. No, yeah, I'm excited for it all. It's
Yeah.
kind of refreshing. I do like that they do switch up the rules. They're trying to innovate the game. It's good for the sport and just the
Mhm.
overall direction that college hockey is heading in. And yeah, like
Hmm.
getting that rule back to with the double jeopardy to getting it to what is consistent through all levels of hockey
Yeah.
will be good.
Yeah.
So a few weeks ago, the NHL draft happened in the Sphere in Las Vegas. Brad, I'll kind of let you take over on here. Just talk about your experience there, seeing that in person. I'm sure that I know you've been to a few drafts before, but that had to have been a whole nother thing. And then just talk about some of the
Venue.
guys,
Yeah.
yeah, the UND guys that got taken to, just whatnot, your whole experience, and yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it was definitely unlike any other one I've covered. The Sphere is really, really cool. The graphics they're able to do, the setting was fantastic. It was definitely, I think, a memorable experience for the players who were there. Really anyone who was there. There was a lot of buzz that this was going to be the last in-person draft.
Mm-hmm.
What I mean
Hmm.
by that is the NHL has everybody goes there. All the scouts, the GMs, the assistant GMs, the head coach, like the entire hockey world is there. In like NFL, for example, all those teams stay in their home markets. So like the GM of the Vikings is in the Twin Cities, and the assistant GM and all the scouts, they all just stay in their home market, and the head coach. And then at the draft, they'll have the commissioner and a few prospects. And there was
Mm-hmm.
talk that the NHL was going to go that direction. But after the Sphere, I think there were some people saying, A, we still need to have an event where everyone gets together, and B, should they do it at the Sphere again? Because it was pretty cool. So you
Hmm.
guys might have watched it on TV. Did
Oh
it look
yeah.
cool on
Mm-hmm.
TV?
It did.
It looked
Yeah.
pretty good. Yeah, it was a good presentation
Yeah.
for
It
sure.
was probably the
Yeah.
most entertaining draft I've seen in a while for
I don't
NHL
think they
anyway.
usually televise things inside the Sphere. So that was kind of a new experience
Yeah,
there.
no. Mm-hmm.
And then, yeah, covering it it can be a wild couple days, and especially in the Sphere. So, you're seated on the floor, kind of in the back of the Sphere. I told someone back corner, and they were like, it's a sphere, there's no corner. What are you talking about?
Hmm.
So the back of the floor, and usually right around where the media members are seated, it's not too far to like a back room, and that's where you do all the interviews. They'll have like 7 podiums, and a backdrop behind each of them, and like a speaker, like a little area speaker. So and then there's TVs in there. So you walk in there and there'll be a TV and it'll say like podium 2, this player, podium 3, this player. And so then you know where to go stand and you wait for them. But that was on the 5th floor in the Sphere. So after it, you go off the floor, you go all the way to the back, walk through it, get an elevator, go up to the 5th floor, walk across a little area, and then you go into this back, room, which is
Oh
probably a
yeah.
storage room generally. So it's a ways to go there, which was interesting. But yeah, the first day from UND's perspective, Sasha Boisvert ends up going number 18 to Chicago.
Mm-hmm.
I think there were a lot of rumors that that could be a destination for him, that he was definitely not getting out of the top 25, and he didn't. So that was interesting too. The very first draft I had covered for the Herald, UND had a first round pick that went to the Blackhawks, and then went and did his media availability afterwards and spoke both English and French. This time, UND has a guy picked by the Blackhawks,
Mm-hmm.
go to the media interview, and he's doing interviews in both English and French. And I was like, oh, I've seen this before. It was Jonathan Taves that
Foreshadowing.
time,
Yeah.
in Vancouver. And notably, Sasha Boisvert will be wearing Jonathan Taves' number at UND as
Oh
well.
yeah.
They're both going to be,
Mm-hmm.
Sasha will wear number 9 this year. And that is, of course, what Taves wore for his 2 seasons here.
Mm-hmm.
So Boisvert got picked, and then I think EJ Emery, you knew it was a chance in the first round or second,
Mm-hmm.
Right.
like one you just had no idea whether he was going to go or not. He ends up going number 30 to the New York Rangers, and from UND's perspective, that is the first time since 2010 that UND has had 2 first rounders in the same draft. So a big opening day
Yeah.
for the Fighting Hawks. And yes, Brad Berry was on hand in Las Vegas to watch his future players get picked.
Yeah, that was
Good.
electric. I couldn't, like you said, Brad, I couldn't remember. I mean, I started watching drafts pretty for the NHL pretty consistently around like 2015 when McDavid got drafted. So yeah, I there hasn't been one that I've seen where there have been 2 UND guys go in the first round, and that was pretty sweet to experience. When Sasha got picked by Chicago, and I think Chicago uh they traded a pick or something like that, and they got a pick around where EJ was gonna go, and I was like, I mean, I was a Blackhawks fan growing up, and then Jonathan Toews and like everybody left the Blackhawks because they, needed to start rebuilding, and I'm a Sens fan now because of the Nordic Sens, obviously, and when Sasha went to Chicago and then EJ was looking like he might go to Chicago, like it was a possibility. I was like, uh-oh, might have to jump ship again. No, but I didn't. So, but yeah,
Hmm.
EJ going to New York, and well, especially when we had those 2 first round picks, I thought there were going to be a lot more. I thought we were going to have a lot of people drafted this year. Like maybe I thought for sure Livanov was going to go, but I mean, we'll
Yeah,
talk more about
I
the other
kind of,
Yeah.
guys.
yeah. The second day, there is a lot of, once you get into the second day, it's really, you and you had a bunch of guys that were borderline, maybe
Hmm.
they will go, maybe they won't.
Hmm.
I was pretty confident Will Zellers would get picked. He ended
Yep.
up going in the 3rd round. Now, Zellers is not coming to UND until 2025. So he's going to go play for the Green Bay Gamblers this season, and then he'll come in. And so should be ready to be an impact player early in his career. Um, Fairly high pick. He gets to go play that year at junior to develop, and then he'll come in. And then the other guy that was, you just didn't know if he was going to go was Max Swanson. He had such an incredible year.
Hmm.
But I'm sure a lot of people are looking at that saying, okay, this guy was the forward of the year. He was the player of the year. He was the MVP of the Clark Cup playoffs. He had all these points. Like, why is nobody drafting him? Like, there are a lot of teams that didn't have him on their board at all. like wasn't even ranked. They didn't
Mm-hmm.
talk about. And the reason why is because there's not a lot of 5'8" guys in the NHL. If you go and pull it
Mm-hmm.
up, there are only a handful of guys. So the NHL guys are just playing the odds, and they're saying odds are a 5'8" guy isn't going to make it. And I think Pittsburgh took the uh, belief that, yeah, no, most guys don't, but this might be the guy that does.
Mm-hmm.
So I think it's really interesting when you evaluate, you hear evaluations of players because um, some guys who maybe aren't the best NHL prospects are really good college hockey players.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
And some scouts are able to articulate that, I think. So when I talk to certain scouts, some of them who really can understand the difference will say, my team's not going to draft this guy, but he is going to be unreal in college. Like, I
Yeah.
don't know if he plays in the NHL. If he does, it's going to be a couple games. College, like he's going to be really good. And I constantly heard that about Swanson, but um,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, he goes in the seventh round, and like you said, a few guys that went undrafted. I really thought Livanovich would go as well. I just
Mm-hmm.
thought
Yeah.
his freshman year was really good. If you look at
Mm-hmm.
historically where he matched up with guys, and the number one thing you hear from NHL people, to play in the NHL, you have to be able to skate, and he can skate. He
Oh
has
yeah.
that. He's elite skater. I think he competes for his size. And he's a guy. If I'm a scout, I take a shot at that guy. But nobody did.
Mm-hmm.
Nobody took Sam Larilla. I thought he had a chance to get picked out of Moorhead. He's going to be here, I believe, 2025 as well. He'll play for the Fargo Force this year. Um, so he was another one that I was he might go, but he didn't end up going.
Yeah,
Right.
Matt going to Fargo was pretty sweet. Having another guy in the UND pipeline that's playing close to home like Max Swanson did. It was pretty cool. Thinking back to the
Hmm.
old days with Zane Gothberg, he was playing there, or Mark Senden even. It's pretty sweet.
Right.
Notable
Oh,
is Sam Larilla's family actually billeted Max Swanson this year.
Oh
So
yeah, that's sweet.
Swanson lived with the Larillas. So yes,
awesome.
I'm sure Sam is pretty happy to. He actually was drafted by Sioux City. I think he made it clear to teams that he intended to play for Fargo and wanted to play for Fargo. But Sioux City took him anyway. The trade has now been facilitated. He gets to come home, and as I just mentioned, his parents have been billet parents for force players. There's a history with the
Mm-hmm.
program.
That's
Right.
sweet.
Oh yeah, that's awesome. Keep Sam close. That's it's worked out when UND guys who have gone or played in the USHL, especially the last few years in Fargo, like they'll come to UND with success.
Mm-hmm.
It's nice having them close. But just some other notable guys that were drafted that are going to play NCAA or did Celebrini at one, the no brainer. We all saw it coming.
Mm-hmm.
Yep, Hobie Baker winner. Obviously he signed. So did Lev Shinov, who win it too. Again, not a huge
Yeah.
surprise that those guys win in the top two.
I was surprised that he signed. I thought the Michigan State guy was gonna. I don't know how to pronounce his name. I'm not gonna try right now. But you said at Lincoln. I didn't know if he was gonna sign for sure or not. I didn't think he was gonna go number 2 overall. He had a chance of. I thought he'd go top 5 for sure, but pick
Yeah.
2 was a little bit of a surprise, and I was surprised he signed right away. I thought maybe he would have had a chance to come back, or
A
would have come
lot.
back.
Yeah, I feel like a lot of the European players, I mean, I don't think a lot of them grow up as, following college as their dream, and it's,
Hmm.
Right.
they're trying to get to the next level. Yeah, the night before the draft, I saw Chris Peters from Flow Hockey, and he was very confident that Lev Shinov was going to go number 2. Chris Peters is very, very well connected, so uh, I trusted his judgment there, and he was right. And And then maybe one of the biggest surprises of the draft was Zeev Buium falling all the way down to 12. He's
Mm-hmm.
the defenseman from Denver. There were some rumors before the draft that he might end up going in the top 5. He ends up, I'm guessing David Carl and the University of Denver wasn't overly sad to see him drop a little bit to where he
Yeah,
goes to
Right.
a team like the Wild, who are comfortable with him going back to school, and they're not gonna, if he goes 3 overall, now all of a sudden I think there are questions of whether Buyam comes back or not. 12 overall had to be a little bit of a relief to Denver.
for
Right.
sure.
Just a few other guys, 2 more names that come to mind from the first round. Both went behind Boisvert. Right behind him was Trevor Connolly, who went to the Knights. A guy who UND will see very, very early into the
Yeah,
season with
his career
Providence at their
starts at
Hall
the
of Fame.
Rels.
Yeah, I mean,
Mm-hmm.
what a place to start too. So, yep, we'll get to see him play. That'll be fun. And then another guy who at the start of the year, I think a lot of people had going in the top 10, but he fell out, Cole Iserman. And Brad, just kind of your take on Cole Iserman, why he might have fallen so low, what maybe went wrong there, injuries, was it just his year not as good?
Yeah, I think he's a really good goal scorer, high end goal scorer. And I heard scouts say, when he's not scoring goals, his game isn't good enough. He doesn't. There's not enough there. Of course, if you can score goals at the level he can, you're still a first rounder.
Right.
But I think there were other areas of his game that some scouts have some concerns with, and we'll see how he develops. But yeah, he was talked about as a top 5 pick a year ago, and
Yeah.
still in the first round. Still had a bunch of
Right.
goals this year, but I know scouts were concerned about some of what happens when he's not scoring goals.
Mm-hmm.
No. Yeah, absolutely. Well, that's pretty much our draft recap here. We'll shift gears to the more UND side here. Let's talk about the incoming transfers here. We might have hit on it a little bit after our Frozen Four pod, but just to kind of recap, we'll start with TJ Semtenfelter, the goalie, coming in from Arizona State. He's played UND before, played in big games before too. I think that's something we noted on last time. Brad,
Mm-hmm.
just quickly talk about his game and what UND fans can expect.
Yeah, I mean he's been really good on big stages. When he was at Northeastern, he was unbelievable in the Bean Pot. Just really held in a Northeastern team on 2 nights that the Northeastern was getting shelled, and the Northeastern had Devin Levi at the time.
Right.
He was the same age as Semtenfelter, so Semtenfelter was wondering, how long is he going to be the backup there? Because obviously Levi's the guy. Levi decides to come back for everyone thought he was going to leave after his freshman year. He doesn't, comes back for his sophomore year. And I think Semtenfelter thought, well, I mean, who knows? He might be here for 4 years. I might never play. So he goes into the portal. He plays at Arizona State for a couple of years. You mentioned the game in Vegas where he beat UND and was very good in that game. And
Mm-hmm.
yeah, now he comes here, and I think the odds are that he ends up starting the majority of the games. I think Hobie Hedquist is going to get more action than last year. They're
For
going
sure.
to raise his game played as well. But yeah, I think UND's pretty excited to have TJ Semtenfelser.
Right. No, it's good to have another older goaltender coming in. Once again, yeah, hopefully Hedquist gets some more minutes in too. He looked when UND needed Hedquist at the end of the year, he looked good for a freshman, and I think there's a good base build up. So we'll see what Brad Berry, Carl Gehring, they all decide to do there. But the next guy we got, a center, took more faceoffs than anyone in the NCAA, Carter Wilkie. Uh, Once again, Brad, just talk about him, what UND fans can expect there.
Well, I think they're looking for some center depth. Um, right now, Cameron Berg is obviously your number 1 center there. And then there's some questions about what your number
Right.
2 center is going to be. Carter Wilkie gives them that option. He has a potential to play there. Owen
Hmm.
McLaughlin has played center with the number of draws he won at the end of last season. He has to win more if he wants to be at center.
Absolutely, yeah.
Hmm.
And so my guess is he may start the year at wing. If he comes in and he's stronger and rolling in the dot, maybe he ends up playing second line center still. Who knows? Boisvert has played center
Hmm.
for Muskegon, and he's a guy who, he was pretty average in the faceoff dot last year. And so now all of a sudden you just get an older, stronger option. You can probably use them in a bunch of different ways, but just really, I think there are not a lot of top six centers in the transfer portal. And,
Right.
the option to add a guy like Carter Wilkie who has potential to do that is, not a surprise UND jumped after that opportunity.
Hmm.
Mhm. Another guy we got, a defenseman coming from a team that we seem to be farming their players for. Caleb
Defenseman, yeah.
McDonald. He's got 3 years, 3 years left of eligibility. Played his freshman year at Alaska Fairbanks. He had a pretty good year there, especially for a freshman. And if he caught UND's eye, that means he's going to be a good player. He had a really nice goal when they came and played here. So once again, Brad Kell McDonald, where do you see him slotting in on the team?
Yeah, he had quite the audition there. He scored 2 goals against UND in one of the games in January. Bigger kid, he can skate pretty well. It'll be interesting to see where all the pairings slot in, but I think has ability to jump into the lineup.
Yeah. No, yeah, that'll be all those guys will be good to see get in action, get them in the green sweaters. We'll kind of go back into our freshmen here. We'll start with we talked about the guys that got drafted. We'll start with some names that people might not know as well. Dalton Andrew, committed from the Winkler Flyers in the
Hmm.
MJ. He had a really good year. They won one of their league championships there. I don't know the exact name. Uh, Big guy too, 6'5". He scores goals. Brad, what do you know about Dalton Andrew? Is he a guy that you will play? Is he probably going to be a throw him in here or there, or where do you see him fitting in?
Yeah, also forgot to mention, by the way, that Caleb McDonald in junior hockey, his defensive partner was Tanner Komzak. Those
Oh,
guys
that's right.
played
Yes.
together up in the AJHL. Yeah, Dalton Andrew is older player from the MJHL. The MJ isn't as powerful as say the USHL or the BCHL,
Hmm.
but sometimes you're able to nab some overlooked players from there. The most prominent one in recent years was probably Cole Smith. He's now on his fifth NHL contract. He was a
Yeah.
older, bigger guy from the MJ,
Hmm.
and I think uh, you know I wouldn't expect Dalton Andrew to play a ton right away, especially when you just look at the other players that are there. He's a guy that will probably try to want to work and develop as his career goes along at UND, and much like Cole Smith did. And by the end of
Mhm.
his senior season, Cole Smith was just an incredibly key player for UND, and
Oh
we'll
yeah.
see where Dalton Andrews slots in. But yeah, he's coming off of a huge year up in the MJ.
Yeah. Another guy we got here, I've heard you throw this term around for him, a Swiss Army knife type player, Cody Kroll.
Hmm.
Just talk about him a bit, Brad.
Yeah, he could play a lot of different. He's another guy who could play center. He can play wing. I think he's a guy that will start out on your bottom lines. He's a guy, if you have injuries, you can move him up in the lineup. Like, I
Mm,
think they can use him in a lot of different ways. I think he is a guy to watch for cracking the lineup right away. He had a
yeah.
sneaky, really good year this year for Muskegon. The scouts I talked to all seem to like him quite a bit. I brought when I brought his name up, they said, he's a pretty good player. He's undrafted, so he doesn't have a lot of the hype coming in, and I don't think he's going to come in and jump into the top six or anything like that. But I do think he is a threat to make the lineup from the start. So he'll be one of those guys battling to get in. And there's a lot of guys that have the ability to play, and some of them aren't going to make the lineup because they have a lot of guys.
Right. Yeah, next on the list here, we already talked to him. Sacha Boy there. Brad, is this a guy with the hype going in? Obviously, college is a step up from the USHL, but is this a guy where you could see him be instantly in a top six role if they get everything figured out center wise and whatnot? Or do you think he'll take a bit more time?
It's a good question. Like he's a competitive kid, so he has that in him, which I think is a good start. I think it's some of the players who don't have that, and they're a skill player without the compete level being extremely high. That can be a transition. He shoots the puck really, really well. That's kind of what stands out to me. Not a lot of guys this day and age can beat a goalie clean from beyond the faceoff dot, and Boisvert was doing it in the USHL. So I think he's a guy that, can, maybe slot in on the power play, just the way he shoots the puck. That's going to be his forte. So where does he slot in on this team? That's something I'm really curious to see, but he's a guy you put as a, first three lines type of player. It just depends on how you want to balance out your lines and what attributes of guys you want with what. But he's going to be a guy that we'll see how fast it comes. I think of
Right.
Blackhawks first rounder last year was a kid named Oliver Moore from Minnesota. Oliver
Mhm.
Moore had a very slow first half of the season, but by the second half he was really good. So if you see a slow start, I'm not gonna. I think you got to be patient with a guy like him because
Mm-hmm.
it'll come. I will just see how fast. Like it eventually came for more, but it just wasn't
Right.
immediate.
No, yeah. Another guy that I didn't have written down, I forgot to mention him, Dave, but he was, I believe, the last technical addition to the team. It was between him and Cade Littler. Uh, he's a big guy,
Mhm.
6'3". So once again, is he gonna play, Brad? Do you think a similar role to like a Cody Kroll, a Dalton Andrew as a first year, or what can you see out of him?
Yeah, he's going to be a guy that's fighting to get in the lineup for sure. And I think part of it is like some of the other guys that are in that situation are older players.
Right.
He's going to have to compete with a guy like Dane Montgomery, who's been here for 3 years. Of course, him and Dane are very, very different players, which it depends on maybe what you're looking for on a certain day. But Littler's like 6'3". He's a big kid. He has experience playing center, so that's a possibility for him. He started last year in the USHL, ended up in the BCHL. He comes in, and I think he's going to be one of the guys that's fighting to try to get a lineup spot. And I'm curious to see how that battle plays out. When you look at the fourth and fifth lines for this year.
Right. Yeah, and when he was in the BCHL, he played for Penticton, and they have been known to put good players into
Mm-hmm.
college hockey and even into the pros too. So
Mm-hmm.
our
Yeah.
last of forwards, probably one of the more interesting guys here, Max Swanson, as we know, got drafted. Uh, a guy who we'll see how he adapts. He's like we said, he's undersized, but that didn't stop him in the USHL. Granted, NCAA is a whole different game. Once again, Brad, is this a guy that could be in a top six role if he gets going, or do you think this will be by year 2 or 3, it'll eventually we're going to see the full potential of this player?
I think there's potential for him to play top six right away. And part of that is every step along the way, Max Swanson does more than you think he's going to do. Like
Mm-hmm.
a couple years ago, I don't think he's going to make the Fargo Force, right? Like he's a 16-year-old year. He's non-tendered. He goes to tryout camp and he makes the team. And then a month into the season, he's on Fargo's first line. And Fargo is the best team in the USHL.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't think anybody, even Kerry Eads, would have ever dreamed that Max Swanson was going to play first line for the Force as a 16-year-old. And he did. Then he comes back next year. I don't think anyone would have pegged him as being the USHL MVP, and he comes back and he just has a great season. So it just feels like every step of the way, he always does more than, you know, people predict. He's small and he's not like a blazing skater, and he doesn't go through guys like Jackson Blake. So he's a different type of player, but he's really, really smart and he sees the ice exceptionally well. You know, Kerry Eads said he's one of the best passers he's ever seen,
Mm-hmm.
and Kerry Eads coached Tony Herkus, so he's seen a lot. And I think he's a guy that UND probably finds a way to get on the power play because, like
Mm-hmm.
Oh
in
yeah.
Fargo, he was just really good on the power play. He gets rid of the puck so fast. It's on his tape, and he already knows what the next play is going to be when it hits his stick.
Mm-hmm.
And he was so good on the power play, distributing the puck. I could see him getting a lot of time there. How many points is he going to put up 5-on-5 as a freshman? Now that's what I'm really curious about. I think he's going to be great
Right.
on the power play. How much can he generate 5-on-5 as a true freshman coming in? We'll see. But you know, you
Mm-hmm.
start looking at the future, and you've got a guy like Boisvert who can shoot the puck, and you got a guy like Max Swanson who can pass it, and you wonder if at some point those guys will be line mates.
Yeah,
Right.
every time I talk to somebody who's seen or knows Max Swanson, they have just exceptional things to say about
Mm,
his playmaking abilities and his passing. Eyes in the back of his head is something that I hear a lot.
mm.
So,
Yeah, anytime you talk to the Fargo guys, like they just cannot stop raving about Max Swanson. So, and those aren't guys that just throw around random praise. So we'll see how he does though as a freshman, but I think there's a lot of excitement for um, how he can produce.
mhm,
Yeah, he will be a guy to watch. Hopping into the defensemen we got coming in, we'll start right off with EJ Emery. Uh, this guy is a freak athlete. Probably could win the Ironman challenge that they do. We saw his combine performance. There's a reason he went in the first round. Uh, Brad, just talk about EJ, the shutdown defender he is. How much could you see his offensive game improving to? Just where do you see him? What role do you see him in this year?
Yeah, I think he goes in the first round, so a lot of people probably are thinking, "Oh, he's going to come in and put up all these points." Probably not going to happen. That's really not his style right now. He's a very good skater. The guy that I keep comparing him to when I watch him that he reminds me of is Derek Forbert when Forbert was at UND. Forbert was 6'5". He had that long stick. Nobody could get around him. He wasn't he wasn't dangling guys and scoring a whole lot, but he was just a really, really good defensive defender. And that's what I see out of Emery. Once he gets the things down on the defensive end in college, because there will be a little bit of an adjustment. I think we'll see how much offense they can grow out of his game. You know, but as a freshman, I'm not expecting him to come in and uh, produce a ton of points. I am expecting him to come in and play a lot of minutes and be a
Right.
very important defender for this team. Now, once he gets here for a second, third year, I think that's where, you know, you might see some offense starting to grow. And that's
mhm,
UND's intention anyways with his development is uh, get the defensive side down, bring out the offense as that goes along.
mhm,
Mm-hmm. And a lot of UND fans too, they look at like defensemen, they look at their points, they'll go, "Oh, he doesn't score a lot." But like scoring is a big factor. It's something you can develop. But we saw when you don't have guys that can shut players down,
Yeah.
you will miss the NCAA tournament.
Yeah.
And that is
mhm,
something that EJ Emery will do.
Yeah, last year I mean they had Livanovich who is pretty dynamic and
Right.
a bunch of guys who basically were really solid defenders, and they
Mm-hmm.
won the league and they were top five all year long. So
Right.
um, you know that's the year before they had more offensive defensemen than they did last
Mm-hmm.
year, and they missed the tournament. So
mhm,
you definitely need guys that can defend. Emery can do that. They have their offensive guys. Um, you know, Livanovich is one. And if we're running down freshman defensemen, we might as well talk about Andrew Strathman next, because
Yeah.
he is the offensive guy that's coming in. He's got some really, really good offensive ability. So, you know, he can skate, he can really shoot a puck from the point on the power play. He can distribute. For him, it's, you know, getting the defensive side down and making sure he makes wise decisions. And that's
Right.
both when to pinch, when not to pinch, when to make a play, when not to, and also when not to take a penalty, because he took a lot of penalties last year. At the college level, can't happen. You will lose
Right. No.
games by giving power plays away to other teams. And we'll see. You know, Hunter Johannes came in here
Yeah, I was gonna
with
say.
significant
Mhm.
penalty problems at Lindenwood, and he was pretty good last year.
Mm-hmm.
He
Right.
didn't take a ton of dumb penalties. And we'll see if they can work on that with Strathman too, because the offensive tools are there for him to be a very gifted offensive defenseman for UND. So,
Mhm.
um, you know, they have a good mix of defenders.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
And that's a guy that having Dylan Simpson as on the coaching
Yeah.
staff, that's where having him being there to be able to coach Strathman, have him bring his defensive game to a level that is suitable on the college level to where he's good enough to play. He doesn't need to be the star defender, but he needs to be able to defend. And especially as a freshman, if you can do a good job, play your role, like that's really all you can ask for too.
Yeah, I mean, if for UND fans, maybe there's a little bit of Christian Wolanin there.
Oh yeah.
And Wolanin, his first year, you could see the offensive talents, and you know he was never a shutdown defenseman, but the what he did offensively clearly outweighed um, any chances he was giving up, especially by the time he was a junior and he was, you know, led UND in scoring. You know,
Mm-hmm.
those are some of the things that Strathman can do. Like, and if UND is trailing in a game in the third period, you may up Andrew Strathman's ice time and you say, go, you're on, just do what you want to do. And he might be able to make something happen. And so there is some value to having those guys that, you know, maybe he's going to play a steadier game and figure things out. But when the time comes and you need that goal, he's a guy that can make a play. So,
Mm-hmm.
Right. Yeah. Our last freshman coming in, a guy who most people probably don't know, but Jaden Jubenville. Uh, the expectations for this guy, I know a lot of people they don't know where he's gonna fit. I think I'm of the opinion, and I think you, Dave, and Brad have said this that this could be a guy that sneaks his way into the lineup if say things aren't going well, or even if they are, like he could be a good player. It just all kind of depends how he adjusts to the college level. He is an older guy, he's got some experience. So yeah, we'll see where he fits in. Yeah, Brad, just quick thoughts on Jubenville.
yeah, the guys in Dubuque absolutely love Jubenville. He's a competitor. He's not very tall, but he's really competitive. He's a, you know, a Colton Poolman style defenseman where his offense comes from shutting down rushes and transitioning the puck back up the ice.
Mm-hmm.
He's not going to be a super dynamic offensive presence, but I think anytime if you hear people mention Colton Poolman as a comparison, UND fans are going to be pretty excited about that because he was such a good, solid defender for UND. And Jubenville, I think you're spot on. He's a guy who I think you probably pencil in as this, you know, battling seventh, eighth D man. But he might surprise some people. Just by the way the Dubuque guys talked about him, they absolutely love Jaden Jubenville.
Right. Yeah, and just I got his stats pulled up right now. He in 53 games this year, he had 17 points. But then when the playoffs started in the 11 games he played, he went up to 5. So, I mean, the offensive game could be there and it could develop. So it's just a matter of, yeah, we'll see where he slots in, whatnot. Definitely a guy that UND fans should keep on their radar. So,
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
he'll probably
oh,
be a good depth defender.
right. Absolutely. Right now, our next segment, we will hop into just some hypotheticals here. We'll only do it with the one unit here because UND has been really good at having two power play units. But Brad, if right now you had to guess who you would throw on that first power play unit, we'll say 1A, who you putting out there?
Well, I think you start with Jackson Kuntz at net front. He was really, really good there. You probably start with Jake Levinovich um, at the point, and then you have three guys you need to slot in. And that's going to be really interesting to see what, it depends what power play they want to run, what hand guys are, where you think the puck's going to be. And, but you've got, the second unit, Strathman's a guy who maybe could be the second power play guy. I think Ben Strinden could be the second power play net front just because he was so good at that in junior. And, he can tip pucks really well. So then you're looking at the three middle guys, and you've got Swanson. I think will get on the power play. I think Boisvert, as far as the freshman, but Cam Berg is obviously going to be a key piece there. Jaden Perron has got one of the best shots on the team. Owen McLaughlin has been running power play units from his spot. You've got, in the bumper spot, Louis Jamernick's played a little bit there. You've got to think of who's going to win the faceoffs. So,
Right.
Cameron Berg maybe starts on the first unit because of his goal scoring and faceoffs. Then the second unit, you got to try to think of who's going to take the draws on that unit too. So there are just so many options that they have. I've written a few of them down and I've thrown them away. But I really feel this is one of those where they're going to have two units, and
Oh
you're
yeah.
probably not going to know which one's the top unit. And it'll all be which one's getting hot at that time. And we saw that a little bit the last couple of years where UND had two power play units rolling, especially last year. And like you had no idea which unit they were going to throw out first because both of them were really effective.
Mm-hmm.
No, Dave, I think we talked about this too. It was really apparent this year with the two units, but just the way that they would even move guys. If something wasn't working, they'd switch Gaber
Yes.
or Blake or someone around. And it made our power play unpredictable. And I think that is something that UND does need to continue to do going forward because we
Mm-hmm.
have had a pretty good power play the last few years here.
Yeah. So they've got the pieces this year. Like the
Right.
talent's there to be pretty good. Obviously losing Jackson Blake he was a big piece of that power play the last 2 years. He was,
Mm-hmm.
but they do have really talented players still there on those units.
Yeah. All right, we'll hop into our way too early expectations here. Dave, I'll hand this one to you here. It's really hard to, I know, Brad, you probably have a little more, but Dave, I don't know how much you have looked into the league as a whole, what teams are going to be good. But where do
Yeah.
you, in your opinion, think UND could land? Is this a team that you go, this is playoff or bust, or Frozen Four or bust?
Yeah, it's hard to say only because the last couple of years we've had teams that we look on paper at the beginning of the season and you're just like, this team could go the distance. Like 2 years ago, you talk about a UND team that looked like they were going to be really good, and people had them in their preseason Frozen Fours and they missed the tournament. So sometimes it's just a matter of how well the team can fit together and how hot they get, uh, how hot the goaltender is. I think since UND's been able to win Penrose Cups pretty much night or year in and year out, only that one season them not have won one in a little while. So they won what, two in a row, and then they won last year, so three in the last
4 or 5.
or 4 or 5 now.
Yeah, 4 or
They've won
5.
It's
4 of
already
the
getting,
last 5. Yeah.
yeah, that's
That's
how it's
insane.
getting to blend in there because it's
Yeah.
been so many. I think that they could at least finish in the top two. I think, and that's pretty safe. I think it's, yeah, definitely doable to finish in the top two of the NCHC next year. What do you think, Brad?
That's I think that UND and Denver will probably be the top two favorites again, as both those
Hmm.
teams have been the last handful of years, it feels like. Um, you know, their D is pretty young. You know, they have no fifth
Yeah.
year seniors. They have
Mm-hmm.
no fourth year seniors. They have one junior. It's a really young D core. Granted, some of them played a few years of junior, so you know they've been around.
Mm-hmm.
But that would be the big challenge is winning with a fairly young D, and but the talent is there. So their forwards should score a lot. Their D, you know, I think has got a chance to be pretty good despite their age. And I would guess that most people have North Dakota and Denver in the top two in some order.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. No. Yeah, I mean, you do bring that up, Brad. We do have a young decor. Definitely going to be some learning at the start of the year. And I hope they can get everyone acclimated in case there is an injury, because looking back at it, and I think we talked about in the last episode, not having Garrett Pike
Yeah,
or Shake Sanderson or
yeah,
Poolman, I mean, you need like those older D, or those, or at least your top guys, especially
yeah,
on defense, to
yeah,
play the minutes. So,
Mm-hmm.
yeah.
I got one kind of to add here. Anyone who wants to answer this can step up. I'm sure Brad will give us something. Where are the biggest question marks right now with this team when you look at the lineups? In terms of who, how do like we don't know how someone's gonna play or how they're gonna transition or where's the biggest question mark? Like Brad, you said RD is still pretty young, especially with the max exodus that happened a couple of years ago, and we don't have as many age transfers coming in at the back end this year. So where are the biggest question marks do you guys think on this team?
I would start number one. Uh, Jackson Blake accounted for a ton of their offense
yeah,
last year. It's can they replace some of that? Like when it was crunch time and go-to time, he was the guy. He made the plays.
Mm,
Who's going to do that this year? That's a question. Um, Owen McLaughlin, nice progression from his freshman year to his sophomore year. Had a good sophomore year. He was also Jackson Blake's center. A lot of
yeah.
points were because Blake was doing unbelievable things all the time. What can Owen do to push up his game as a junior and keep progressing in the right way? Because he made really good strides from freshman to sophomore year. And that can give them, that can give them some options up front. What progression can Jaden Perron make? I think he's supremely
That's a big
talented,
one.
and has ability to be an all conference player. So like, can they fill in some of those spots? Can they find a second line center? Like I think
Hmm.
Cameron Berg is no doubt a legit first line center in the NCHC. Can they have a really good second line center that can hold it down? Whether that's McLaughlin, Wilkie, Boisvert, um, you know, that is one of them. I think then you kind of move their depth is good. I mean,
Yeah,
they
it's
have
there.
to score on their fourth lines because they should be better than other teams there. And then I would say on D, how quickly can you get the freshmen up to speed? I think
mm-hmm.
you pencil in right now EJ Emery, Andrew Strathman, and then even a sophomore like Caleb McDonald, who are just going to get to learn. You pencil those guys in and playing a lot of minutes for this team. Like, can they handle that? It's not easy. Freshman defenseman Jake Levinovich had a very good year. It's not everyone does
Yeah,
that. So, that would be, and then the last one is can TJ Semptimphelter come
yeah.
in and really anchor the goaltending position and give them can they get 920 goaltending or something? Like that 920, these would have been, top of the league last year.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, but what exactly can they get in net from him? I think those are the big questions for me anyway.
Hmm. Yeah, no, having a goaltender that can go 920 or anything above that, especially in the NCHC. I mean, Person had a great year last year, but if he was at I don't know how many more wins he would have, but if he was at 920, that's quite a bit more saves. And that's also such a big confidence booster too if you're a goaltender. And if you're maybe I'm not a goalie, so can't speak from experience, but I bet if your average is it's good, but you're hovering right around that 9 to 8 kind of benchmark, you're like, oh, I wish I was up here. It might be better. You might be second guessing yourselves and whatnot. So
Mm-hmm.
And that can help a
no,
young decor too. If you have a goalie
right.
that's dialed in and covers up a couple mistakes here and there, um, that can be a big help too. So we'll see. And they have a
Yeah.
challenging schedule right off the hop too. So it's they're not going to be like easing into the season. We'll see how quickly they can get some momentum going.
No, yep, you are 100% right. So we're kind of getting towards the end here, but I will all go around and do this. Talk about just some guys that we think need to step up, maybe make that one more jump. I'll start. I got a bunch of names to go through, but I think some guys that come to mind are like your Ben Strindens, where
Yeah,
you've seen the skill, you see him just the way
Got a
he
little
drives the
taste.
puck. It's like, yep, it's like when is he really gonna make the jump we're expecting? There's the Jaden Perron sophomore year jump. Like, is it we knew he was a good player. He not that he had a terrible freshman year. He's had 18 points. That's a good
yeah.
freshman year. But is he going to get to that Hobie Baker level that I think a lot of us think he could be at? Another guy, uh, Louis Jammernick, he's been so solid, so consistent his time at UND, a shutdown guy. But I think there's another level to his game, especially on the level of finishing at the net, because there were so many times this year where he was driving to the net and he was beating guys going backhand, but he just couldn't finish the puck.
Yeah.
And when
Yeah.
he did, he was scoring big goals. But he's a guy who I think could pick up some of those points that we're losing from Jackson Blake. So I'll hand it over to you guys. Just any guys that you think do need to make a jump for UND to be successful.
Well, I mean, you mentioned Ben Strinden as one. I think that's a really good pick. A lot of those bigger kids like him, it takes till like their upper class year. You see some
Mhm.
flashes, then as they get older, the consistency comes. Like I've seen it so many times. Brad Malone, Chris Van de Velde, um, Jackson Kuntz. We saw what he
Yep.
turned into as a junior. And now it's Ben Strinden's junior year. So I think he's had a solid start at UND and you see the flashes and now, I think consistency can go up. You mentioned a lot of the other ones, Perron is a guy, and I really think if Owen McLaughlin can continue pushing up, that has potential
Mm-hmm.
um, to be important for UND because I think he's got some really good skill. And then the other guy, I think that you wonder if he could add to the scoring because he does everything else is Dylan James. He's got the
Yeah.
speed. He can take it to the net.
Mm-hmm.
If the pucks start falling for him, uh, he could be a guy that we're not even talking about here. We didn't even mention him on the power play yet.
Right.
But he's a guy who I think has the ability to, uh, you know, for fans that aren't in Grand Forks and fans of other teams may say, "Who is this guy? Like, where did he come from this
Mhm.
year?"
Mm-hmm.
Because he's a really, really good player with that elite speed.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I'd like to see a little bit more from Jake Schmaltz. I mean, after having such a great freshman season a couple of years ago, to now just kind of being a floater. I don't know. I not like a floater in a way where he's not playing well, but like he just isn't putting up as many points as he used to be. I would say instead of using the word floater, a little bit more not, and I'd say maybe a little invisible, like just off the score sheet, doesn't really get noticed a ton on with scoring. I'd like to see some more points come from him to pick up some of that Jackson Blake slack. He had such a good freshman season when he was playing.
Yeah,
And you just haven't seen. I don't know the part is with him, where he's lacking to get those points, but I'd like to see him get back up to speed like he was his freshman year.
Mhm.
yeah. Confidence can
Yeah.
go a long way.
Oh
Hmm.
yeah. No, I 100% agree with that. We kind of did a little bit of like the question marks you said, Dave. Well, I'll go around here and share one thing. You can be as specific as you want, but something that UND needs to do or clean up uh, to really make the jump to being a national title contender, which they already are, but something that will cement themselves up there. I'll go first. I really do think we need to get back to winning faceoffs. Not that our faceoff percentage wasn't abysmal by any means. We were in the top 50%. So it's not like we were terrible, but I do think when you look back at some of the teams like the 2020 team 21, like you throw out Shane Pinto or like Connor Ford, and it was like they were
Hmm.
gonna win the faceoff. I think that's something that UND kind of lacked this year. And like we said with Omac at the end of the year, like he's so good with Jackson Blake, but if he's losing the faceoff, the puck's not in Jackson Blake's hand. So
Yeah.
I mean,
Hmm.
yeah, that's my one thing. I don't know what you guys have.
I
You can add
would
to that or what else.
I would say one thing I really noticed UND struggled on this year was breaking out of our own zone. We'd end up having to throw the puck down the ice a lot, and it wouldn't always be an icing, but sometimes it would be. And I just think EJ Emery being around will probably help with breaking out quite a bit. He can move the puck, transition it up ice for UND to spark some more offense. So if he can clean that up, I think that'll be a good thing to do, a good goal to have this year. Brad?
I think for UND is probably just getting a goaltender hot at the right time of year, probably.
Yeah.
Um, Matt Davis struggled big time for much of the year, and then all of a sudden he got hot at the right time, and he was lights out in the NCAA tournament for
Oh my
Denver.
God. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And we'll see if TJ Semptimphelter can do that. If he gets hot at the right time, they have the pieces in place to have a good year. So we'll see.
Yeah.
No. Yeah, 100%. Like if you would have told any of us going into the Frozen Four that Matt Davis was going to go on that run, I'd been like, he's like the fourth best goaltender in the NCHC,
Yeah.
and he's going to lead Denver to the national championship, stop Boston, hold Boston College under what was it, one or two goal like that. No goalie does that, but if UND
Mm-hmm.
can get that from TJ Semptimphelter or even Hobie Hedquist at times, like that is going to go a long way. And it's not that we weren't seeing that from Ludwig Person or like Drew DeRitter, but I think there is another level that we could see our goaltenders hit. That like a guy like Cam Johnson, when they won the national championship, he was
Yeah.
on that level. When Adam Scheel was doing really good, he was on that level. When Peter Tomey had to come in, he was on that level. So I would agree with
Mm-hmm.
that. We really got to find hopefully our goaltending can get hot because it that does win national championships. So almost to the end here. This is for kind of the UND fans, for anybody that's active on any space, UND Twitter, UND whatever. There's a
Sioux
lot of
Forum,
people that oh yeah, SiouxSports.com. If you want to get into an argument, go on there. But
Facebook.
if for a lot of people are under the impression or assumption that Coach Barry needs to go, uh, for a guy who's won 4 Penroses in the last 5 years in the best league, that is, in my opinion, a crazy statement. But however, I do think there is an argument to be made that if UND misses the tournament or they have a really bad tournament game, there could be, not saying he should get canned by any means. That's not what I'm getting at, but maybe there is a conversation to be had. Just Dave, we can start with you on this, but what would you say this year as a UND team kind of means for Brad Berry in his coaching career?
Yeah, I don't know. It's one of those things where the last couple years where UND probably should have had some deep runs in the NCAA tournament and they didn't happen. It's one of those things where you get asked and you try to step back. You don't really have a definitive answer of what went wrong with the UND squad. So I understand where people are trying to maybe they are just trying to point fingers a little bit and figure out what's wrong with these teams, and they kind of just all end up landing on Bradbury's plate. Uh, I don't really know. It's hard to say when a coach is a bad coach or not a good fit because Bradbury's winning those Penrose Cups every year, something Dave Haxtell didn't
He's a
do,
winner.
and
Yeah.
it's like they flip-flopped a little bit. Barry wins the regular season titles and none of the playoff titles, and Haxtell would not really win a whole lot of regular season titles, and now he would win the Final Five 3 years in a row or every couple of years, and then he'd make deep runs in the Frozen Four, and we're at the Frozen Four every other year or a couple of years in a row. Um,
Mhm.
I don't, it's hard to just point a finger at the coach. Um, I don't know if it's his style of how he coaches, or Brad Berry's not a bad coach. It's just I don't know what would have to happen. Yeah, you'd like to think he could make a Frozen Four here at some point. I mean, we gotta be hopeful. I thought it would have happened sooner rather than later, but yeah, I don't know. What do you think,
Yep.
Brad? You know the
Well,
guy pretty
I mean,
well.
I've covered UND for 20 years. I think a segment of the fan base has wanted the coach fired after like 18 of them. So like
Oh yeah.
when the whole like fire the coach thing all the time, it's kind of like goes in one ear and out the other. It's like
Right.
Hmm.
crying wolf at some point. Like every single year, basically, fans want the coach fired, and
Oh
it's like
yeah. That's at UND. Yep.
it's not just like unique to UND. Like Minnesota fans want Bob Motzko fired.
Oh yeah.
Everyone wants all these coaches. It's like the new thing this day and age is like you're gonna find that one coach that's never gonna lose. Um, uh, so I think you look at the big picture, and if you're in the mix and you give yourself an opportunities consistently to win games, you're consistently filling the bill. Like now, Wisconsin, all of a sudden the Badgers were really struggling under Tony Granado. They weren't in the mix. They had bad records. The fans left. There wasn't anyone there. That is what leads to a coaching change.
Right.
You needed to do something. You needed to change things up. Uh, right now, the program is, as you said, they've won the Penrose Cup for the last 5 years. The building is full. They're getting high end players in recruiting. Like everything is setting up right now for them to continue to be successful and to continue
Exactly.
at the games in the program. And when you do that, eventually things are going to happen at the national tournament. You need a few things to
Hmm.
go. You need to be good to get there, and you need some things to go your way. You need to get there. That is like the big thing. As long as you're consistently getting there with good teams, you got a chance.
Hmm.
And Denver this year, they're in double overtime against UMass in the
Oh,
first.
UMass. Yep.
UMass had a great chance to win that game
Hmm.
in double overtime. Now, if that puck goes across the line and in, are we sitting here dissecting? This is everything that was wrong with that Denver team. They didn't have enough older
Hmm.
defensemen. They should have got a portal guy here. They didn't have the goaltending. They,
Right.
but the puck didn't go in. And then they won a couple overtime games. And now all of a sudden they win the national title. And we're talking,
Hmm.
this is everything that's right with this. It's the same team. It was the team
Yeah.
that
Yep.
comes
No.
first round. So when you're dealing with such incredibly narrow margins in the NCAA tournament, um, I think you have to uh, take that under consideration. That we are talking about a bounce out of a 45 game season, the bounce of a puck in one game is
Right.
ultimately is going to determine everything that's right with the team or everything that's wrong. In 2016, like, hey, Denver scores on that power play with 5 minutes to go, and everyone is dissecting, okay, this is what was wrong with that North Dakota team. But it didn't. UND comes down, scores, wins. So there are really narrow margins in a one and done situation.
Hmm.
Of course, UND wants to get back to winning a national championship and
Hmm.
going to a Frozen Four. But nothing really guarantees that that's going to happen.
No.
There's not
Yeah.
one coach out there that will guarantee you are going to the Frozen Four all these years, or that you were even, so, you know, I would say at this point, you look at it, there's a better chance that a coaching change leads to worse results than better results.
I was just gonna say that. Yeah.
Like fans never think that can happen. What happens if you go get and Tony Granado comes in and all of a sudden you're finishing seventh? And that can happen. Fans don't think it can
Hmm.
happen here. Wisconsin fans didn't think it could happen there. Minnesota had a couple down years when they weren't making the tournament, and people, that can happen. So, um, as far as Barry goes, I mean, he's, barring something completely unforeseen, he is going to be the coach in 25,
Agreed.
26 as well, no matter
Mm-hmm.
what happens this year. Um, and I would say if you're looking at things from a big picture, which I tend to do,
Mm-hmm.
you look at the class they've brought in the last few years. They've brought in some really good classes, one after another. And that is what
Mm-hmm.
Denver's success has been, is stacking a bunch of recruiting classes. And UND's done that. Um, and you look at this decor, it's going to be the same decor for next year too. They don't lose a single guy on that D.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe someone unexpected, so you have turnover, but um, they have a chance to be pretty good here. And um, that I think is got to be exciting for fans. And the other thing is they've been pretty good. For the last 5 years, they've
Yeah.
had a league winning team. This program hasn't had a losing season since 01, 02. Like
Yeah.
even their
Mm-hmm.
bad, even UND's bad years aren't bad. Like the fans here, I don't think know what a bad year is. They actually
No.
haven't had one in an entire generation now. It's been crazy the run that they've
Mm-hmm.
consistently good teams they've had.
Right. And I think you look at like the time when the 2 years when you indeed missed the playoffs, like they barely missed them too. And the other thing is people just seemingly, yeah, they think about those years, but then 2019, 20 rolls around and they have like what, 5, 6 losses all year. Like it's incredible when you let a coach develop a team. He can
Yeah.
Brad Berry can he brings in guys. He's
And
a
the
good
other thing
coach.
I think a lot of fans have the olden days in mind too. Like the longest NCAA tournament streak right now is I think 5 years. Like
Okay.
nobody in the entire nation has been to more than 5 consecutive NCAA tournaments. Nobody. Like
Yeah.
it's different. Like you remember when Michigan was going to like 20 tournaments in a row, and UND went to how many in a row, and Minnesota would make like nobody's gone more than 6 straight years. It's
Mm-hmm.
crazy. Like it's a different era right now. But yeah, are there the things that UND wants to probably do better? I think uh, when they've missed tournaments, you've seen some blips in recruiting, I believe. I,
Hmm.
I think you've seen some guys that just didn't develop after they committed them. And right
Right.
now, um, I see a bunch of really good classes stacking up.
Mm-hmm.
And then, when you do that, you have the ability to throw a Will Zellers to Green Bay this year and have him develop
Yeah.
for an extra year. Um, and I think that
Oh.
they're going to be benefit from being able to have Strathman um, play in junior last year and come in now this
Yeah. That
year.
was big.
So I think they've been pretty focused on development, and that is part of the reason they grabbed an extra defensive transfer last year. They could have brought
Hmm.
Strathman in, but I'm going to have him develop one more year, so his path is better. And I think maybe that's trying to learn a little bit from what happened with like Brent Johnson when he came in a little too early, or a Johnny Tyconic who was really high end up, but he was here a little too early, didn't really work out. They transferred, and I think they saw that and they're trying to adjust things like that and say,
Mm-hmm.
okay, well, we're going to have Strathman back one more year, so this doesn't happen again.
Hmm. No, yeah. Completely agree with all that. Our last question of the day here. Once again, I haven't looked too much into it, Dave. I know you haven't either. Brad, I'm sure you've gandered on it a little, but some Hobie Baker players just around maybe UND even, or on other teams that maybe jump out. I think the big guy coming into Boston College, James Hagens. I would consider him to be a potential Hobie Baker candidate. He's probably going to be the first overall pick in next year's draft. I mean, there's just so many good guys coming back. Brad, who anyone come to mind specifically too for you?
Yeah, the last two Hobies have been freshmen, and as you mentioned, this year's Fantilli slash Celebrini is James Hagens. I think he'll
Mhm.
be a finalist there, but with Leonard going back to BC, I think I
Oh
put
yeah,
Leonard ahead of him. I think Zeev Buyam is going to be a candidate to be Hobie. Um, those are a couple of guys that jump out right now to me as top guys. Do I see anyone from UND winning it? No. I think if Blake came back, maybe.
yeah.
But it can if a UND guy like someone catches fire, be a finalist, maybe. They have some really good players, but I see probably Leonard, Hagens, and Buyam as the top guys entering the season off the top of my head. Trying to think, am I missing anyone? But those
Yeah, I
are
don't
those are
know.
the
Yeah,
three that really uh jump off the page to me.
right. And looking at a guy like Dave, I know we talked about it. Ryan Leonard, he's a goal scorer. They love the goal scorers, so I
Hmm.
do agree with that take that yeah, he's gonna be good.
Rucker
Dave,
McGroarty might be
yep.
a
Oh, yep.
guy
He's coming
at
back.
Michigan. Um, Minnesota's getting Snuggerud back, and
Yep.
if he scores a lot of goals, he went on a big goal drought last year in the second half.
Yeah, that was yeah.
If he buries a bunch, he could work his way into that mix too. So those would kind of
Hmm.
be a Big Ten guys that jump to the front of my mind.
hmm You got anyone, Dave?
If I had to pick one from UND, I don't. This might not even be a Hobie Baker pick, but just like maybe the highest scorer for UND this year, I'd say Cameron Berg. But I don't think he
Yeah,
has Hobie Baker potential per se. But I'd probably say Leonard, probably. Just how
yep.
good he
Ryan
was
Leonard.
last year, and now he's got another year coming in, and he's got a lot of talent still around him, and some new guys coming
hmm
in as well. So.
hmm Yeah. Well, that's all I got for questions here.
All right, yeah, I think that'll about wrap up the catching up with Brad and the boys summer special. Thanks again, Brad, for being our guest as always. Wouldn't be Brad and the boys without Brad himself. So probably be back sometime in the foreseeable future for I don't know, maybe a early or pretty early preseason show. So I guess we'll leave it there. Thank you all for watching or listening because you can watch this now on Spotify and YouTube. So thank you everyone for listening. Follow us on Instagram. The link should be in the description of wherever you're watching this. So check it out and give us a follow. And thank you guys all for listening. We'll see you guys in the next one.